In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 theories of intelligence. We're going to discuss Spearman's theory, Gardner's theory, and Sternberg's theory. And then in class, we'll go over more criticisms connected to them, how savant syndrome connects, and testing intelligence. But you should have the information about intelligence theories in your book. I'll start with Spearman. His theory is the oldest one. Spearman's theory goes into the idea of general intelligence, which is a general intelligence factor. He calls it his G factor, that, according to Spearman and others, underlies specific mental abilities and is therefore measured by every task on an intelligence test. So you can have an overall intelligence score because you can have an overall general intelligence. Spearman would also say you have what he calls S factor, specific intelligence, but your book does not go into great depth with that, does not define it, so you do not need to memorize that. But you do need to know that Spearman thinks there's this idea of general intelligence and overall intelligence. And there's a little bit to back this up. People that do better on the SAT do better in school, although that is an aptitude test more than an achievement test. But you know, your overall score does say something about how you're going to do. So that is the idea of general intelligence. Gardner's theory is a theory of multiple intelligence. Both Gardner and Sternberg have a theory of multiple intelligence. For Gardner, he says there are 8 different intelligences. You do not need to memorize what the 8 are, although I'll list them for you. So for example, you have naturalist. If you have high naturalist intelligence, you would be a really good farmer, potentially. You would love to be a park ranger, that sort of thing. You have linguistic. That would be a good public speaker, potentially a good poet, writer. You have logical, and mathematical goes into that. So you would be a good lawyer. If you were a lawyer, you would have to have high linguistic intelligence and logical mathematical intelligence. Musical. So this would be someone who is good at playing a piano, writing songs, that sort of thing. Spatial. Someone with high spatial intelligence would potentially be a good pilot, would be good architect, would be good at painting, that sort of thing. Bodily or kinesthetic. This would be someone who would be a good football player, a good dancer. They can use their body well. And then you have intrapersonal and interpersonal. And so the the difference between intra and inter is that intra is within and inter is between. So if you have high intrapersonal intelligence, you would potentially be a good therapist. You could really understand your own thoughts and how others read you, really understand the motives behind doing things. Interpersonal intelligence, you would be good at human resources. You would be good at potentially marriage counseling because you could understand other people interacting with each other. You'd be a good leader, organizing others, because you understand the interactions between people. So these are Gardner's theories. There is a 9th your book does not go into so much, called existentialism. So you do not need to memorize that one because your book does not go into depth on the existentialist. But there is that 9th that he added after those original 8. So again, you do not need to memorize those 8. But we'll talk about how the Gardner perspective connects to savant syndrome. It definitely aligns with that. The final one is Sternberg's theory. And that theory says that there are 3 types of intelligence. So for that reason, it is called the triarchic theory. And he says that the three types are creative, analytical, and practical. And so the easiest way for me to remember that is to think of having a thinking cap. So the Sternberg's three, creative, analytical, practical. What these are. If you have high creative intelligence, this means that you are good at thinking of things in new ways, being able to use things in novel ways. That would be new ways. Think outside the box. If you have high analytical intelligence, this would mean that you are good at remembering facts. This would be an ability to problem solve potentially. A good way to think about this is book smarts. You're going to really be tested in school on things that connect to analytical intelligence. And then practical intelligence, you could think of this as street smarts. And this is being able to handle everyday tasks. So again, Sternberg says these are each unique types of intelligence. So you could have someone, I'm sure you've known someone, who did really great at school, but they had absolutely no common sense. Out in the real world, they were not so intelligent. That would be someone who had high analytical intelligence, but low practical intelligence. Or you could have someone who was really creative, but is not doing so great on the Scantron tests. And so Sternberg says you really need to focus on all three types of intelligence, that the school system of only really focusing on analytical is not very good. You really need all three of these to have an overall global intelligence. So you do need to know Sternberg's three. You do need to know that Spearman has his general intelligence. You do not need to memorize all 9 or 8 of Gardner's. Just know that he had 8 in his original. And again, in class, we will talk about criticisms of the multiple intelligence approach and how savant syndrome can be explained by a few of these. And then we'll go more into intelligence tests.